Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak to you, even though I couldn't be there in person. I want to make a very general point before I talk specifically about one or two suggestions, one or two inputs around digital identity. So the first is my observation that the last time I came to Brussels, I checked into my hotel room, and in the safe in my hotel room, I locked up my passport and my driving license and my credit cards, and I went out to dinner using just my room key and a prepaid chip and pin Euro card that I have, which is what I use in case I lose it or it gets stolen or something. So my point is, the things that were important to me, the things that are crucial, my real identity, I want kept locked up. I don't want to take my digital identity out around all over the internet into a million different places. I want to keep my identity locked up. Michael said at the very beginning about the idea of partial identities and attribution. And I think this is a really core and really powerful concept. I think a mistake with digital identity strategies in the past, and I think I've been consistent and open about this, is that they have tried to construct a digital identity which is like a passport or like a driving license, a single source of truth about a person which must be presented in all circumstances. And I think an important element of the Commission's vision about digital identity should be that digital identity is not like physical identity. It's not like a passport. The whole point of a digital identity is that digital identities can do so much more. People can have multiple digital identities. I mean, many people in the Commission are very uncomfortable with this idea of people having multiple identities. But this is crucial to the online environment, so that people can partition themselves into different areas. People can have partial identities. People can also have, using cryptographically advanced techniques, completely anonymous identities. I mean, you might ask, why would somebody want a completely anonymous identity? Well, what if I want to report a crime, for example? I want to report a crime, and you need to know that I am a real person, that I'm a real citizen of Europe, that I'm over 18 or something. But I don't want to tell you who I am. I will never report the crime if I'm forced to show who I am. So the spectrum of possibilities for digital identity is very much wider and much more interesting. And I think in the past our vision has been too limited. Now, I strongly agree with the GSMA that Mobile Connect is a core way forward. But I would like to see a situation where Mobile Connect is used as a core identity which allows us to generate those different kinds of virtual identities that we need to operate in cyberspace. So in the case of Telecom Italia, it's true to say that Telecom Italia know who I really am, but when I walk into the bar to buy a drink, I'm not showing the bar who I really am. I just want to show the bar that I'm over 18. And I think there are strong European principles of privacy here. You know, I think an important element of the Commission's vision should be that we want security and privacy. We don't see security and privacy as some kind of balance. We want both of them. And the partial identities and virtual identities are a way of achieving that. So I'm very keen on seeing that taken forward. So I would like to make 3 positive suggestions. Since I strongly believe that the mobile phone is a core way of building this in Europe, I would like to make 3 very positive suggestions to feed into your discussions this evening. So the first is that the idea of what I'm going to call tokenization, so the idea of leaving the real identity stored away in the bank or in the phone company or with the government, and taking a partial identity out with me when I go out on the internet. This is exactly what Visa and MasterCard are doing with payments with the new smartphone systems, Apple Pay and Google Pay and so on. It's exactly the same idea. You have a token, you don't have the real identity. So this is already a very well-established way forward, and I think we can embed the principle of tokenization into our visions of digital identity in a very positive way. I think a discussion that many of us have had before about trying to cut down on identity theft and identity fraud is that we have two choices. We can either make identities harder to steal, or we can make them harder to use. And I think making them harder to steal has turned out to be very problematic and very expensive. The tokenization solution of making them harder to use might be a very good way forward. So my first suggestion is tokenization. My second suggestion is that I think that the card metaphor is too dominant. So we think of identity as an identity card, and that, I think, harms our thinking. You know, we live in a network world, an online world. We live in a world in other industries of platforms and APIs. So if you live in a world of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, of Microsoft and Amazon, you live in a world of platforms and APIs. And I think part of the Commission's vision needs to be about creating an identity platform, not a digital version of an identity card. A platform that people can constantly interact with. And I agree with the previous speakers about the need to make the security and privacy simple, otherwise people won't use them. But I think the speakers have already shown that they have the tools to do that around the smart card. But the smart card is not a replacement for an identity card. The smart card is a way to connect with some kind of underlying European identity platform with APIs that allow for invention and innovation on top of them. And my third point is that I think the idea that the digital single market depends on identity, I think that's true. I know it's a trivial way to say it, but I think in many ways a single European identity area is much more important than a single European payment area, because so much of government, business, commerce, individual interactions doesn't depend on payments, it depends on identity. Somebody said earlier, I apologise, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said earlier about the use of messaging and chat as a serious tool, as the next generation are doing. And those are exactly the areas where we should be trying to build in this common pan-European digital identity, so that you know a child in France can communicate by chat with a child in Italy, and they can both be certain that they are children, that they have permission, all of these things without disclosing their identities. As I say, embedding some European values. So if you agree with me, and I think I've heard priority here, if the idea of a single European identity area is important, then I think we should ask ourselves who will deliver that. And here I'm going to be a little critical, because I think the work to date has especially the work on interoperability has focused on government-issued electronic identities. You have people like Facebook and LinkedIn stepping in to fill the gap. That's how, at a practical level, people interact. They use these bottom-up identities, not the sort of government top-down identities. And so we need a framework which brings security into that area as well. And I'm not saying either of them are perfect, but I think in many ways the US and the UK approach, which is to have the government help to create a framework for both private and public sector identities to interoperate, I think that would be a fruitful way forward. So my three suggestions are: we think about this tokenization approach. We don't think about taking our digital identities around the internet. We think about keeping them locked up and taking tokens out instead. That we think, rather than thinking about identity cards and how to make them digital, we think about an identity platform in a world of APIs and networks. And thirdly, we think of a framework that allows private and public models to interact. So I hope that those are positive and useful suggestions to feed into the discussion.